Yeah, hey, this is Mike Swanson. I'm at Dave Skarica's place in Eleuthera, Bahamas, and I've been to the Bahamas, I don't know, probably half a dozen times or something. But this is the first time I've visited you on Eleuthera. It's been a real interesting trip. I mean, just landing off the airplane, I've never been to an airport that tiny and that easy to come in and out of, you know, as far as, you know, lines or anything like that. And the island itself was real neat. It's like, with 10,000 people on it?
Yeah, the island's really unique because, well, see, first of all, you have to understand about the Bahamas. It's a little different than a lot of places in the Caribbean where you go to places like the Barbados or Jamaica, or they tend to be like one island. You know, where the Bahamas is a group of 700 islands, probably roughly a dozen or so have, like, you know, significant populations on them. But what's happened over the years is kind of like everywhere, things have become more urbanized. So everyone's gravitated to Nassau because Nassau's where the jobs are, where the money is, where the government's located. So if you have roughly 350,000 people in the Bahamas, probably roughly 250,000 of those live in Nassau. And this little island here, there's a bunch of different islands in Eleuthera, but the main islands are the main island of Eleuthera that we're on now. I'll tell you about more about that area in a second. An island called Harbor Island, which is also known as Bryland, and that's to the north. Another island to the north called Spanish Wells, which is actually populated most by pretty affluent white Bohemians who have commercial fishing there. And probably Eleuthera is roughly 10,000, roughly Harbor Island's 2,000 people. Spanish Wells is probably about roughly between 800 and 1,000 people. And so the area I live in, this is the main island of Eleuthera. This actually, that beach that you see in the distance there, some waves, is Surfers Beach. And the reason is most of the Bahamas is surrounded by reefs, but this beach is not. So you actually get wave action. Mike's picking up my cat here, Peanut. But anyhow, so the reason I picked this particular area was a bunch of reasons. Number one, I like to be on hilltops, and you can see the view. This is probably the best view, or the second or third highest point of Eleuthera. Not only that, the highest point in Bahamas is only about 200 feet above sea level at a little hill in Cat Island. This is probably about 170 to 180, so this is one of the highest points in the Bahamas. Secondly is, there's two main towns of Eleuthera, or two main areas in my opinion. The main area where kind of everything's happening with bars and restaurants is Harbor Island, where we went a couple of days ago in the north. And then there's a town called Governor's Harbor, which is probably about 30 to 40 miles south of here. And we're kind of I'm kind of right in the middle of those two areas. And the town I'm near is called Gregory Town, which is, I guess, the most famous thing about Gregory Town is actually two things. It's kind of like the origins of the pineapple, or pineapple farming came up in Gregory Town. And right now the kind of current famous thing is that Lenny Kravitz has his music studio over there. But anyhow, so that's why I picked this area, because in between these two major parts, I have, you know, this great view, and this subdivision never really got developed, so the prices are still very, very reasonable. What happened in this subdivision is, see all these electric lines here? They never made an agreement with the government in the subdivision. So when you put in your electricity or put in your telephone, you got to cut the electric company or the telecom company the check to do it. It's not like, you know, they made an agreement with the subdivision. So that's one reason it never took off, because all of a sudden you're adding 10, 20 grand onto the expense of your home, because you got to, you know, get the wires up and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm kind of on this hilltop. It's an interesting area. There's professionals, surfers, artists, beach bums. It's like a lot different from living in Nassau, where most of the expats tend to be professionals. Here it's much more, I guess the word would be hippie-ish.
Yeah, it's like island life.
Yeah. Which I like. It's a lot of creative people and neat people. And we were going around to some interesting places. Like there's a guy named Mark who has a burger shop in Governor's Harbor, who's totally off the wall. He's something out of like a Hunter S. Thompson novel. And we were there having burgers with him and stuff like that. And I just find that maybe it's the small island vibe, so it breeds less political correctness. But I just find there's a lot of characters and interesting people.
Well, it was funny the other day we went to the island north of us, and it's real fancy. You know, the real estate there is like $5 million. It's lots of billionaires.
In Harbor Island,
yeah. And then we had to go over there by ferry, and then we went in this little bar, got something to eat. this guy was in there drinking and drunk.
Well,
you know?
I was in the washroom and he was cursing in the washroom. I was, you know, anyhow, I was like washing my hands and I heard him in the stall and he's cursing about what a awful day he had and how he's getting drunk as hell tonight. He went on and on. I could just hear him going on about how he's getting drunk. So then we see him at the bar drinking. So then these ferries from Harbor Island to the mainland, they usually stop running at around 6, 7. So it was after 7 and they don't come as often. So all of a sudden we see one come and we all started laughing because it was this guy who was saying that he was getting drunk like all afternoon, right? And he was the one taking us back. Now it's a very simple.
He wasn't that drunk when he was driving around.
No, I don't even think he was drunk at all, to tell you the truth. But it was just funny seeing that guy say that, and then all of a sudden he's your driver.
No, it's kind of neat. You know, it's just you get a real small town type feel here.
Yeah.
You know, we've been going around, and every place you go, you've only been here. What,
everybody knows me.
A few months, and everyone already knows you. You know, it's kind of interesting.
I kind of stick out because number one, you know, being kind of more of a professional, this island isn't really full of that. Number two, I drive this old, I think it's an old kind of beater, but it's a 99 Mustang, and, you know, there's not too many drop tops here, so I kind of do stick out here, to tell you the truth. But there's other great, beautiful parts of the island. When you come back again, we'll probably do videos more from other areas. Like we were at this thing called a blue hole, which is basically a hole in the ground that drops for like 1,000 feet. And it's right in the middle of the island in an area called Rock Sound in the south part of the island. And just north of us is something called the Glass Window Bridge, which is where the Caribbean meets the Atlantic. Now we're looking at the Atlantic here, and the other side over here is the Caribbean. Yeah, I can see both from my deck. I can watch the sunrise and the sunset. And so at the Glass Window Bridge, that's right where they meet. So it's amazing, all these little things you can see. And then there's a little area at the bottom of the island's most southern part, which would be probably an hour and a half drive from here, called Lighthouse Point. And the point kind of wraps around the island. So on low tide, you can literally swim from the Caribbean to the Atlantic. So there's all these, in my opinion, kind of cool things you can kind of do here. And like you said, that small town feel I really like. Because, you know, I lived in Nassau for 6 years, and you guys know when you were there, I had a lot of friends, I knew a lot of people. But I would say I met more people in the couple months I've been here than I met in Nassau in 6 years, and I have more friends here. Because it's just, people always think that if you move to a small town, you're going to be a hermit and isolated. But yeah, and I saw Mark Faber say this one time. But no, the big cities are the places where people are antisocial because they're worried about this and crime or somebody stabbing them or just like, you know, I think people get stressed out. Yeah, getting around and get stressed out from crowds and stuff like that. So I find a place like this is actually much easier to and
it's a good balance for you being a high stress thing.
To have a low stress day-to-day life.
Trading stocks, talking about it, and then to be here.
Now this house needed a bunch of work, so that hasn't been low stress, but we're almost near the end of it, so hopefully it will be then. And I guess, you know, but then I hope I have a low stress day-to-day life with a high stress job. And I guess the last thing we can kind of mention here is that if you like what you see here and what we're talking about, we are considering, nothing like solid yet, about maybe there's this concert on the island in mid-April, and it has to do, it's like a big Earth Day event with some famous musicians sitting there. So joint with that, we're thinking about doing an investment conference here on the island. Very small kind of conference just for a few people, but we think it'd be a lot of fun, you know, and it'd be different because you do an investment conference in a setting like this, you know, rather than in a hotel room in Manhattan.
That's right. We were talking like maybe a dozen to 20 people at the most.
Something very, very, very small. Yeah.
So, well, I guess we'll let you go and do another video in the future.
Yeah. Thanks.